Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, welcome to the class of Literary Criticism 2. Today we are going to discuss the second part of structuralism. Yesterday we did cover some points in structuralism of literary criticism. We tried to cover the origins, a brief history from a shift from phenomenology to structure, like the liberal humanist would argue to look into the text closely, close reading, while the structuralist would focus more on structure or form. That's why some people call them conceptualists as well. We were talking about the key thinkers, and this Saussure was he's considered to be the founder. And then basically these thinkers have been grouped into different groups. The first one is linguists, in which we discussed Saussure yesterday. In anthropologists, we have got Levi Strauss, who is basically an anthropologist, a philosopher, and literarian. Another group is the literary critics, and then the predecessor, which was the Russian formalism. To recap, we tried to discuss it yesterday. Today we are going to look into Levi Strauss as an anthropologist, his structuralism, and he tries to basically uh, he takes his Saussure's model and asks the question: can we apply it to the entire cultures? And his work on kinship systems and most famously myth is the paradigm of structuralist analysis. So we have taken an example of Strauss's work, and it's the Oedipus myth. So our rating of blood relations, Cadmus in this, obviously in this piece of literature, Cadmus kills the dragon, Earthborn, Oedipus kills his father. Basically, Strauss is confronted with the problem of the myths. So myths across the world seem chaotic, endless, and contradictory. How can we find a systematic language or system behind them? So he devised a method. Uh, if you remember, yesterday we talked about the first principle is that of breaking down the myths into its smallest units, which are called the mythemes. This isn't a character or an event, but a relation. So basically, Levi Strauss focuses on the relationships between these small myths, which are the part of a larger myth. So we need to break them down. Second, then he tries to arrange these myths in columns. So instead of horizontal, he puts these myths into vertical order, and then look for the binary positions that the myth is trying to reconcile or mediate. So the myth as a whole, he breaks it down into pieces in different mechanisms and then tries to look into, arrange them in the columns and tries to look into those binary oppositions which the myth on the larger scale is trying to reconcile. So the Oedipus myth, uh, Levi Strauss isn't trying to interpret the myth in a Freudian way. He's showing that the myth is logical machine. It's working through an unresolvable contradiction in human thought. Are we born from one biological reproduction, which involves two parents, or are we born from the earth, which implies a single origin? The myth does not solve the contradiction, It provides a logical model that allows the contradiction to be thought about. This model for a structuralist analysis, the text is a machine for working through cultural contradiction. It's for them, the text is not something which needs close reading, unlike liberal humanists. The structuralists are for they take text as a machine which tries to work through different cultural uh, contradictions and try to resolve them. So the Oedipus myth as a whole, that's a myth. And then Levi Strauss basically breaks this myth down into uh, myths or sub-myths, which overrating of blood relations, in which Cadmus kills the dragon, or Oedipus kills his father. Underrating of blood relation, Oedipus marries his mother, Antigone buries her brother against the law. Another main theme is denial of auto, autochthony, man born from the earth. Then affirmation of autochthony, names like Oedipus, swollen foot signify a link to the earth. He couldn't walk and try to the soil. So the conclusion of this myth is the myth is a logical tool that mediates the contradiction between man born from one biological reproduction and man born from two autopathony. So this myth of Oedipus myth was basically taken as an example of Levi Strauss's application of Saussure model on anthropology and his structuralist model, which was for language, according to Saussure, the Levi Strauss put that applies that on uh, anthropology. So the second key figure in structuralism is Roland Barthes, and Roland Barthes is the figure who brings structuralism into mainstream of literary criticism. So it was founded by Saussure, then Strauss brought it to anthropology, and the role Barthes is the figure who tries to bring structuralism into literary criticism. Barthes' career is fascinating because he moves from a high structuralist position to a post-structuralist position. Uh, but for the time being, obviously, we should concentrate on his structuralist principle, and then in later lectures, we would try to look into his uh, post-structuralist theme as well. So, for Barthes, the critic's job is to describe the text, not the work. The work is a thing you hold in your hand. The work is a thing you hold in your hand, a product, while the text is a methodological field for Barthes. It is a process of signification. In his essay, The Death of the Author,